In this video, we're going to cover the install on a 71-500 1301 full door set for the 2014 and up Commander. The first thing you're going to want to do when you open the box is find the hardware kit. Your install instructions will be in the hardware kit. You'll want to read them all the way through and understand them before starting to do any work on the vehicle. To start your install, the first thing you're going to do is remove the front panels and your glove box. Now that you've got the glove box out of the vehicle and your front panels removed, the next step will be to get the nets out of the way for the door kit. And to do that, you take the webbing of the 3 top buckles, leave the net connected to the vehicle, and store it underneath the seat. Next, we're going to install our hinge post onto the B-pillar of the vehicle. To do that, we're going to start by removing this strap and buckle, and do not discard it. We will be reinstalling it later. And removing the hardware from our shoulder bar here. One thing to note when installing your hinge frame on the vehicle, it may be necessary to stack some washers between the roll cage mount and the frame itself. And to determine the proper location, what you'll want to do is take your routed gutter and place it on the vehicle and shim your hinge frame out until your mounting point lines up with the routed gutter. Next, we're going to install our gas strut mount onto our shoulder harness. You will need your C-clamp, the rubber protector, the shock mounting block, and our spherical ball. When installing your door strut mount, there's a couple things that you're going to want to watch out for. First, you want to make sure that your shock mount, the top corner is out of the radius of the handbar. You want to make sure that it's positioned so that when viewed from the top, your shock mount block follows the same angle as the door bar itself. And lastly, make sure that you're going to be able to get your gas strut mounted over the ball. The next step, we're going to remove the buckle to perform our front bulkhead modifications. When you remove the buckle, you can discard the nut, but make sure to keep the buckle. We'll reinstall it later in the process. To do your bulkhead modifications in the instructions that come with the door kit, you will have 2 templates that should be to scale. Before cutting anything on the vehicle, you will want to verify that the scale on the drawings are correct. You've got number 1 for the passenger side, and number 2 is for the driver's side modifications. With your template cut out, line it up with the bulkhead and mark on the vehicle where you need to make the cuts. A tip to make the cutting easier is to drill out the corners so you have a place to start and stop your cuts. Once you've got your bulkheads cut, the next step you're going to need to do is using these 2 holes as a template, drill all the way through with a 1/4 inch to mark your location, and then from the inside come through with a hole saw and drill out the plastic so that you've got clearance on the inside for the nut. Once you've got your clearance holes drilled in your bulkhead, the next step is to put the lock bolt on the lock bolt support bracket. When you do this, you'll want to make sure that the pin is facing out away from your support bracket. A couple things to note when installing the lock support bracket that you'll want to watch out for. The passenger side of the vehicle gets the two washers stacked between your bracket and the existing bracket that's welded to the vehicle. You want to make sure that your hardware is clear of any plastic on the interior side so that you get a good hard joint. And then it's critical to torque your fasteners to the torque listed in your instruction manual. When installing your striker bracket, if all the holes don't line up properly, it may be necessary to increase the length of the slot at the top of the bracket. If that's the case, take your template and lay it over the striker bracket and use it to mark out how much you need to increase the length of the slot. Once you have it marked, use a die grinder to increase the length of the slot. The next step will be to install the gutter on the vehicle. To do that, you're going to want to loosen up the hardware holding your windshield on and slide your P-clamp behind it with the flat side facing out. One thing to note, if you are installing the door kit on a vehicle that already has a windshield on it, the next step is to install our rear side panels. To do that, you will need your female hinges. And you'll want to make sure that when installing it on the vehicle, the barrel of the hinge is out away from the face of the plastic. With your hinges mounted snug but not tight, you can position the rear side panel, watching all of your body lines to line up, and mark your holes for drilling hardware. When drilling your holes for your push rivets, you're going to want to make sure that all your body lines line up nice, both at the rear panel and at the body of the vehicle. To install your door on the vehicle, again, you'll want to make sure that all of your hinges are snug but not overly tight. And what you want to do is get them both started and then just cycle the door a few times until everything works its way down and is seated. And from there, once your door is hung, you can start to work on locating your latch on your striker bolt. To get your door to latch, you'll want to apply a small amount of upwards pressure on the door, and you will need to adjust your striker bolt until it engages with the catch in the latch. Once you've got your door hung in place, you can go ahead and install the M6 screw to the bottom side of your top hinge and go ahead and replace your front panels on the vehicle as well. The first thing we noticed when we had our door hung on the vehicle is we were getting a lot of bunching in the gasket at the bottom edge here. So what we did to remedy that and where we started our door adjustment was by opening the door and putting an upward force, we were able to tighten up the hardware on the male hinges with the door in the raised position. From there, we were able to get it adjusted close on the striker and tighten up our female hinges to the B-pillar, watching that we had consistent door gaps and a good sealing surface around the entire body of the vehicle and a consistent line at the bottom edge and no bunching of our gaskets. Next, we can move on to installing our gas strut to assist holding the door open. You'll take your ball stud and install it from the bottom. Tighten your nut. Remove the little snap ring post from the gas strut and pop it onto your ball studs. Once you've got your gas strut installed on the vehicle, you may have to do some slight adjusting of the mount here. You'll want to just loosen up your hardware a little bit and rotate the block outwards so that the gas strut will always have pressure on it even when the door is in its fully open position. Now what we've got here is all of our door gaps on the outside of the vehicle are consistent and the door will latch as it's supposed to, but what we've run into here is our striker bolt is all the way at the end of its forward adjustment in the vehicle, and we still have room in the slots at our rear hinges to go backwards. So what we're going to do is loosen up our hardware holding the female hinges and move this whole door backwards on the vehicle slightly so that we're not using all of our adjustment in the striker bolt. Now that we've got the door moved backwards and our gasket surface and our door gaps are consistent on the outside of the vehicle, we can now come back in and start to readjust our striker bolt and latch for the new door position. Another piece to note is that to get your door to latch properly, it may require the adjustment of the latch on the interior of the door. So the latch on the vehicle will have two stages of engagement, and what you want to watch for when you're adjusting your latches, when it engages the first stage, your gasket should just be touching off on the surfaces of all of your body panels. And then when you engage the second stage of latching, that's when your gasket is going to compress all the way around the perimeter of the door. Once your door is adjusted properly, you can now install the net buckle back onto the bracket. One thing to note if you're installing the roof kit on a vehicle that has a cab kit, you'll want to make sure that your gutter bulb seal is installed on the gutter prior to putting the roof on the vehicle. Once you have your door on the vehicle and adjusted properly, there is an additional one-page instruction sheet for adding washers to your hinges on the vehicle. What you're going to need for this is just a simple block of wood to put on the back side of your hinge frame to mark your hole centers, and then an 1 1/4" hole saw to route out your plastic B-pillar. When doing this, it's super critical that you only do one hinge at a time and that your door stays latched on the vehicle during the whole process so that you don't get anything out of adjustment once your door is properly located.